Welcome to this installment of the ExecRanks Executive Path Education module for positioning yourself for succession and recruitment, led by Jim Ramerman, CEO of Ramerman Leadership Group.
Core part of transforming an organization, changing an organization, is strategic talent management with an intense focus on having the right personnel in senior leadership positions and having a pipeline of leaders for the future. So that's why we're talking about this idea of succession today. There's two foundational principles or dynamics that I have come to see as key to having a successful organization. One is having a winning strategy, and secondly is having the right people in the right positions. If I had to choose between the two, like having, like this perfect strategy or having the right people, I'd always go with having the right people in the right positions, because those people, if they're right, if they're talented, they can recreate the strategy and make sure that it's right. But a strategy itself, is not going to change an organization. So strategy can't execute, only people can. So I always choose the principle of having the right people in place to guarantee long-term success. I believe it's a continual process, just like lifelong learning. So CEOs of organizations, especially when they start to get to middle-sized organizations, need to be thinking multiple generations of leadership, maybe 2 and 3 generations of leadership, and to have a leader in place and be ready to shift to the next generation and then still a third generation. Also, leaders need to be thinking about emergency situations. If you have the time to plan and you can pick people and get them ready, that is terrific, like I say, generation after generation. But if you don't have people in place and you have an emergency and you lose your top level of leadership, you have a real crisis, and I've seen this happen. A number of years ago, I was working with a professional services firm, and they lost their leader, but they had not picked a new leader, and they didn't have a good process in place for picking a new leader. They wound up picking someone very quickly who wound up being absolutely terrible in terms of the culture of the organization, and actually wound up being in trouble with the law a number of years later and being removed from his position. And that was just an awful thing to see in an organization that was a global organization that had an office in every time zone around the world and has so much responsibility for people, and then to see that happen. So you need to be ready if there's an emergency, and you need to be planful and be really getting the best people in all those key positions. First is to make sure that the people you are looking at as successors, as an individual, or if you're having options, make sure that they actually have the potential to grow into the CEO role. If you have a family-owned business, you've got to make sure you're not looking overly biased at your own son or daughter, and make sure that they not only have the DNA, as a human person, but have the real DNA of leadership to be ready. So we need what we call, has been researched as learning agility, the agility to learn new things and to be able to perform at high levels of leadership. And of course, you want to model the way. You want to demonstrate the skills and the behaviors and the mindset that you hope to see emulated. But modeling itself is not going to ensure that. You need to do much more. I believe that mentoring is key, to do that continually, to let that potential successor or group of successors know what you're thinking on each key issue, why you think the way that you do, and how you come to decisions the way you come to decisions. As an effective leader, you can break that down and share that. A very powerful way to help leaders to grow is to give them stretch assignments, new challenges that they haven't taken on before. Nothing grows you like stretching, whether it's, physical exercise, trying to do more and more, but in leadership, to do something different, maybe cross-functional training in a new position. So that's a stretch. When you add that with mentoring and coaching, that's a powerful learning process. I'm a believer that you ought to invest in internal training in the organization and external training, so you get the inside understanding, but outside and new ideas like best practices. So let that successor meet with other leaders and potential leaders and get the best ideas and learn different ways of thinking. And in the mentoring, you ask them powerful questions to get them to think and to evoke that kind of process from them. And finally, continual feedback. A lot of positive feedback every time they do something right, especially when it's an extraordinarily valuable contribution that they've made. Let them know. give them the tough feedback too. Let them know when they've made mistakes or when something could have been in a better mode than they did. So feedback, is it's the breakfast of champions. It's like you're eating your Wheaties. You want to have people get used to that and make sure that they accept feedback and appreciate feedback and get a lot of that as a leader. Individual development plans, I think they're a great idea. It gives you goals. It gives you a plan. It makes you think out loud and to communicate expectations. But the most important thing about them is not the plan itself. I think they're really an opportunity for deeper discussions and ad hoc meetings and planned meetings where the current CEO and the potential CEO really can have conversations as issues come up in the course of business. And the plan can evoke those kind of questions and raise discussion points. So I'm a big fan of IDPs, but I'm a bigger fan of powerful, developmental, and exciting conversations between leaders. Number one, and this is true of any leader, whether it is going to be a middle manager or someone who really aspires to be a CEO, that's know yourself intimately. Know your talents, know your skills, and know your limits. Invest in your own development, both formally and informally. You find the best mentors and use them. I read a book a while back. I was teaching mentoring and studying, and there's a book called Power Mentoring, and it says you don't just have one mentor, you have multiple mentors. Maybe you have a mentor for strategic planning, and maybe you have a mentor for leadership, and maybe a mentor for how to supervise people well or something on the technical side. So you can have multiple mentors. I would just say get all the training and mentoring that you can. Ask your mentors and the leaders around you how they think on key issues and why they do what they do and how they make decisions. So be extremely inquisitive and curious and risk asking questions and being willing to show that you don't know everything and you're hungry to learn something new. Ask for the stretch assignments that I talked about. Say, hey, give me something more to do. Maybe something cross-functional, maybe a new project or a task that forces you to grow, think differently, develop new skills, learn something that you've never thought of before. So stretch, grow all the time. And not only learn something specific, but just get used to that process of always growing and improving yourself. And again, you can ask for feedback. I encourage leaders to give it, but I encourage leaders to ask for it. So be more than open. I had actually an administrator, and Bill, this is over 20 years ago, and she said to me, hey, Jim, I've got some feedback for you. And I said, well, I was very proud of myself because I said, well, of course, Jenny, I'm open to feedback. She said, that's not good enough. I need you to be hungry for feedback. I said, oh, and I just, I squared my shoulders and I took a deep breath and I said, okay, I've decided I'm hungry for feedback. And that makes all the difference. Just being open to it is very kind of passive, but being hungry for it says you really want it. So it was a lesson that I took from my administrator, and I've never forgotten. It sounds biased or prejudiced, but I really think you should invest in an executive coach, someone who can be independent, give you challenging feedback, ask questions, and who's really a professional at developing people. And just one more story on this. I had somebody who was a COO, and her aspiration was to be a CEO. So I recommended that she network and develop a research project and ask maybe 10, 12 CEOs how they became a CEO. What were the barriers? What did they have to do? What do they like about it now that they're a CEO? What's hard about it? And she wrote an article based on that. But boy, she learned a lot, and she became a CEO. No surprise. That was a tremendous process and exercise for her. And finally, I'd say believe in yourself, and then be ready to take on, because if you want to be a CEO, you work at these things, it may just actually happen. And I'm working with a couple of people right now that are surprised at how challenging the role is. So if you believe in yourself, you do the work, you will actually become what you dream. So be ready. Okay, well, this is about the principles underneath that. And building on some of what I've shared before, the first thing is to do this thing that sounds like polar opposites, and that is to be both confident and humble. It's a paradigm, I think, for all leaders to consider and work towards. So confident means you know that you are effective, you know you can do the job. And humility says, hey, I know I got some strengths, but I also have some weakness and some limits, and I need to be continually learning. So confidence is a very appealing trait. It's also a very effective one. It attracts people. It draws teammates to work with you, someone who is a calm and confident leader and who believe in themselves. But humility is also the key to a deeper level of confidence, someone who very much is within themselves, doesn't need to be arrogant, doesn't need to be the center, and can be very present to other people because they're confident within themselves but don't need to be the star. In recruitment, I'm going to just say that the question and the key there is to know what you want. I heard this very simple principle put out that you should hire slow, transition people out fast. So in other words, be very thoughtful in the hiring. Know what are the competencies, know the roles, know the qualities, know the corporate culture, and find someone who's going to be a great fit. And take your time to make sure that that person is a great fit for the role, for the CEO position or for a successor position. And then, if it's clearly not right, make the call, say thank you for your work, and then move on, and don't languish with a tough decision. But if you do the work up front, you're going to have to do less of that, I'm sorry, and much more, this is exciting, welcome on board, you're doing a great job. So, again, I'm going to pound away at this core principle of knowing yourself and your strengths and weaknesses. And specifically, I suggest engaging in a 360 process with an instrument and an executive coach who can help you to debrief the results of both a quantitative assessment from your peers, from your direct reports, from your boss, from your customers, so that you know what skills are your strengths and which ones are your limits, and give some qualitative data, too, where people can give you comments on how you relate, how you perform. That data is absolutely invaluable. I worked with a CEO who was already in place, and he had never had one of those before. It was a startling result. There was certainly some great strengths. He was successful in the field, but he also had a lot of things to work on, especially in how he managed internally. And he worked for several years and redid the same instrument and just saw a tremendous uptick in his performance. That can happen for a successor and for people throughout the organization as they move up to get powerful feedback from an instrument. So that's what I would recommend. Career stallers and stoppers, the things that would stop you from moving to a more senior position or a CEO position. And you want to know what those things are. They're going to trip you up. Things that could show up like political missteps or a lack of strategic agility or the failure to build a team. Those kind of things are literally the make or break kind of competencies that a CEO needs to have in order to be successful. And if you know that you have a limit in that area, you can begin to work on it and do everything you can to move your effectiveness up in each of those key areas so that you don't have anything that is that tripwire, that pit that you would fall into. And instead, it could be something you could say, hey, this is something I worked on and then I've learned. And the candidate can build on their strengths as well as work on those areas so there are no insufficiencies to hold them back. The position of ultimate responsibility, that of being a CEO, is unique. Every move, every decision, every non-decision has consequences. Every single person is watching a CEO. What you do, what you say, who you spend your time with, who you invest in, everything. So with every step upward to more and more levels of power and responsibility, the consequences go up just the same. So the senior and CEO may not even realize it, that there's a risk of what I call the power gap. And that is the perceived power or the real power between the CEO and all the other people in the organizations. Where are those sources of power? Well, the title, the position, decisions around resources, information. It could be the amount of education. It could be the contacts that you have. It could be your connection to the board. Every one of those things is a source of power and prestige, and if not managed well, can cause a gap between you and those people who might be intimidated, overwhelmed, be afraid to approach you. So approachability is key. They might also be hesitant to speak truth to power. So the CEO needs to be approachable so that communication happens, that there's connection and communication. Otherwise, the CEO is not going to know what's happening in the organization. And they need to have someone who's going to tell them the truth about themselves, too. And speaking truth to power is something you want to get some leaders around you who have that courage and the ability to call you on things, not only to tell you when you're doing well, but also tell you when you're about to make a mistake or when you've made a big one, so you can correct it and you can adjust. So truth-telling at the senior office is absolutely essential for the team, for the CEO, and for the sake of the organization itself. Well, you're going to have to tap into relationships. Relationships are the key to kind of the information and the possibilities that exist. So you build new relationships. You join associations. You engage with other senior executives and other organizations. People know people. So every single person you know knows a multitude of others. So keep adding to your network day to day, week to week, and get more opportunities. You're going to relate, you're going to connect, and you're going to engage. So you can find the best organizations, maybe the type that you dream of working for and with, and make those connections. I was working with a young attorney who dreams of being a managing partner. So she's networking up and down the coast, East Coast, different major cities, people she knows. And they just this morning reported that she found some new possibilities that she was thrilled about, someone who will mentor her to move over time into the role of managing partner. That happened because she did that very thing. She not only did a good job in the firm that she's in to enhance her reputation, not only has a great resume that she worked very hard at, but making those relationships and getting out into the field and meeting people in the arena that she dreams of working in, the kind of people she's working for in the future that she really wants to work for, and finding those mentors that can make all the difference for a career with a talented young person. So I've seen that over and over again. Leaders need to not only do a good job at home, if you will, but they need to get out into the community and maybe into the region or even national networking to make those relationships, come alive and be known and find out their own possibilities and what they want, as well as other people getting to know them and what they can bring to the party. The board of directors' role is to select the new CEO. It can be recommended by the previous CEO, or they might be watching you all along. So potential candidates, if you will, are continually being assessed. They're being informally interviewed by board members. Every presentation, every contact with a board member is an interview where the reputation of the successor is being built and being shaped. So presentations are absolutely key. Working with board members on task forces are opportunities to practice skills and make those connections. And in some, just keep in mind all the reputation opportunities you have and all the relationships that shape the reputation of the successor. Well, take every opportunity to present to the board. Don't be shy. Don't be pushy, but don't be shy. Get your current CEO to give you opportunities to share your expertise, your insight with the board, reporting to them, and do it very well. If there's a task force or a committee, volunteer to be on it and be a resource. Show your willingness to serve, your willingness to team, your ability to get a job done. I recommend you ask questions, get opinions from the board members. Be inquisitive. Build relationships with people, and one of the great ways to build those relationships is to let them see that they have something of value to bring you. So as opposed to always knowing something, asking something is my recommendation. and find out what the board members are interested in, what's important to them, and get their views and their perspectives on it. Each board member is unique. Practice the skill of interpersonal agility, of treating people the way they want to be treated. That's the rule, as opposed to treat everybody the way you want to be treated. Treat people the way they want to be treated, and that's a great skill with board members. What is their personality type? What's their approach? What's their field? And get inquisitive and connect with them in a unique way, and build those relationships. Avoid political missteps. Those are things that stand out. Things like criticizing one board member to another, or criticizing the CEO to a board member. Not being careful about how you speak to people who are diverse. How do you talk with men? How do you talk with women? How do you talk with people of color? How do you talk with people of different roles and professions with respect and with dignity? So those kind of things are absolutely essential. Done well, they're going to build up your reputation, build your relationship, and make you a really valuable resource that a board will want to have as a high-level executive, as a potential future CEO for the organization. It is so important that it's worth the investment to create a culture of talent development. Get clear on the set of strategic talent management principles that you and your organization lives by. I've actually put together an article that I shared with a number of CEOs, and I said, look, take this article, edit it, take my name off the bottom, make it your own, because this article is all about what I believe about strategic talent management, about growing and developing and recruiting people and how to manage them. And what I want each leader to do is get clear how they believe they should manage people. So mine is a draft that they can take and make the article their own. It's just my mission to help leaders to be more effective in this very important thing of talent management, which includes, of course, succession and recruitment. Ensure that your board, your senior team, and people throughout the organizations, your talent management personnel, your human resources department, believes in talent investment, with individual plans, with mentoring, with training, with having successors, maybe a couple of successors for every linchpin position. It's a fantastic goal to set up for and work towards. And ensure that they're putting those ideas and principles into play with programs and processes. I believe the ideal is to learn to love to develop people, as opposed to think, people are such problems, we got to do this work. Fall in love with it. Developing people is something that will continue to have a return in the organization for as long as those people are in the organization. For as long as those people are working with people, they're going to be more effective and be making a great organization and growing leaders underneath them as well. It really is the leader's greatest legacy to develop talent, to develop successors, to raise people up in the places of positions of leadership where they can make a difference in the organization and in the world. So talent development is the greatest ROI a CEO can generate.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to further preparing you for the role of CEO in our next education module for identifying skill and experience gaps. If you have not done so already, please review our research summary on today's topic for further insights.